In my previous 7-part series, I searched for the location of Atlantis by taking clues from Plato, the originator of the tale. Along that path of intense study, I began to get a feeling that his story may have been about more than just a desire to share the truth of Atlantis with the world. It seemed convenient that the hero of the story, being Greece, was the same people that he wanted to accept and implement his theories of a perfect society. His circular city was very similar, although perhaps more improved, to the popular circular city of Carthage of his day. This motivated me to do a new study. This study would be to seek out the story of Atlantis as if Plato never existed. What I uncovered was incredibly fascinating, because it tied into every god story told by every culture that surrounded the Mediterranean. Once you venture into this incredible labyrinth of a rabbit hole, with twists and turns that continually take you in ever-increasing new directions, you get the feeling that a sound story can never be attained. And this is why the oldest historians tended to avoid the true story that has been buried deep below the various myths and legends of what were referred to as the gods of old. Diodorus Siculus was one of the brave historians that did his best to tell those stories. But even he pointed out that most historians would not touch the subject. Now, when I state that I seek the truths buried beneath the myths, that is my mission here. Can I put together a real-world tale of events? A history, if you please, that makes sense and follows a timeline, and maybe even takes us to real locations on a map. Discover why, on this journey to find Atlantis and its king Atlas, I cannot tell the tale without mentioning the Amazons, Berbers, Titans, Olympians, Athena, Gorgons, Minerva, Triton, as well as maybe even a connection to a real man named Noah. We will attempt to make connections the way an investigator would solve a whodunit. What was the War of the Titans really about? What was the motive that caused such a war? Where did the Amazons go? Are they still here today, and how did they interact with the Atlantans? Was there a special island that was the center of all the action? Was that island destroyed by a great earthquake? I will show you its exact location and we will raise it from the dead. Now let's get started. First of all, where did all these gods come from? And why were they thought of as gods? Well, gods are called gods for the same reasons wizards are called wizards. Whoever has the greatest technology and knowledge will easily be seen as gods to those who know less. Many religious people believe that humanity has only been around for somewhere less than 10,000 years. But really, that is no surprise? Because history cannot begin until humanity breaks away from an animalistic life. As long as we were hunter-gatherers, there really was no history. Our entire days and weeks and months were spent the same way as most the animals of the world. Finding food was an all-day, everyday affair. Until we could find a way to streamline the production of food, there would be no time to use our creative minds to imagine societies, languages, and inventions that could be the first steps to lifting us into the next stage of humanity. Whichever tribes could figure out farming and language would be the ones seen as gods by the rest of the world. And this brings us to the beginning of our story. It's not that the first man was created less than 10,000 years ago. It's more like the first civilized man showed up within that time. We could not begin to keep track of genealogies until men could actually give their children names. And when we developed the technology to write those names down, then history could begin. And so where do we find the first gods? Well, we find them in the same place that agriculture and farming began.
Let's start off by understanding why were there gods? Why were people considered gods? Okay. Now, to understand why people were considered gods, you need to understand that whoever was to be considered gods would be the people that were first able to create agriculture. Okay. So, one of the starting places of agriculture, and therefore, once you create agriculture, you now create an abundance of food. When you create an abundance of food, you now have time to start analyzing the world around you. Start learning to create writing, so reading can be created. To start thinking about life. To start thinking about where did we come from. To start philosophy. All this stuff can happen once food is taken care of. Because people now have time. They're not like cavemen who had to go out every day and struggle so hard to get food to feed themselves. For at those times, they didn't have proper language yet. They just couldn't start building civilization. Civilization started getting built when agriculture started being mastered, okay? And where agriculture began to be mastered was around Macedonia. It's over here, around Macedonia, right? So basically that would be around this area right here, okay? And so, this is where, like some of the Christian religious believe that the earth is 6,000 years or whatever. That's because, as I said before, that's when man was created as far as civilized man, civilization man, right? And that all started in this part of the world, in this giant Mediterranean, whatever surrounds Mediterranean, this part of the world, that all basically started, it did start over here where the Bible kind of talks about, which is the Nile, the Euphrates, or not the Nile yet, it's back here, the Euphrates and the Tigris River. Okay, the Euphrates and the Tigris River is around here somewhere, and it was by this big lake right here, which I can't remember the name of right now. And so, here's where the stuff gets so interesting. Okay, look, the Bible talks about, and I'm only referring to this because there's a connection, a real historic connection, in my opinion. Okay, the Bible talks about Noah, and he begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, now when you look through all historic documents, right? It turns out Noah, he must have been, he was a boat maker. He was like a big deal. I think he was like a boat maker, what have you. But you have to understand, in Noah's day, this area that they lived in, this area was so fruitful. That's why they were able to master agriculture. But every year, at certain times of the year, you get massive flooding. Every year, at certain times of the year, you get massive flooding. And there was one year when, of course, you're going to have a lot worse flooding than previous years. And when that occurred, then the Bible came up with the story of Noah and the ark, and it flooded the earth. But that's not what happened, in my humble opinion. Okay, I'm sorry to you religious people. It's my opinion. Your opinion's fine. We all got an opinion. That's what, So anyway, so let's just read some of the things we wrote here. Okay, Utnapishtim landed at Mount Nisir, modern Mount Piramagron. Okay, I think this was something I figured out is that the story I read about Utnaptishtim. Now, Utnaptishtim doesn't come from the Bible. That's from other manuscripts, but other tellings of a flood story. Okay, so Utnaptishtim, who's actually Noah in the Bible and goes by other names and other whatever. The one manuscript said landed at Mount Nisir, modern Mount Piramagron. This part, I guess, I just figured out. And I give you a location right here. So you go to Google Maps, figure it out. This is where Noah's Ark landed, all right? So, I think Noah was probably a shipbuilder. He's a wise guy. I mean, he knows when he knows from the past. Every year you get floods, you get floods, you get floods. He probably has stories from his grandfather and great-grandfather that there's big floods that come every so often. So he was a boat builder, so he was more prepared. He built a boat to take care of his family. Of course, then the Bible goes and says he put on all the species, all the animals. I don't buy that personally. He had the boat. He got flooded. He probably lived. I don't know where he lived here. I probably did know, but I didn't mark it on here. And his boat landed here. Okay, that's my best guess, right? And then the waters receded. They came back into this lake, what have you. They wouldn't have receded over to here. Because this would be like a higher land here, so the water would have receded back into here. Basically, this flooded. That's where this just expanded it. Well, not just this flooding, but of course. By the way, you need to know all these blue lines. I added to this. Okay, these blue lines are where rivers used to exist. Okay, and I came up with that, and then I overimposed it upon this map to help us to get an idea of where rivers used to exist. Okay. Let me see if I even have an idea. Here's actually where some of that data came from. It took me a lot of work to actually transpose it into this other thing, but you can look over that, see what you think of that. Let's get back to my map. Okay, and then I don't know, maybe his home was destroyed here. Noah, Janus. Now, from time to time, when I put Noah, I'll put another name that he was also known as, right? So Janus, I don't know, that's probably the Greek word. The Greek god, right? So Noah actually was the Greek god Janus, considered a god, right? So he settled Mount Judy in Armenia, right? And I give you the kind of exact location here. But basically, Noah was a wealthy man, a powerful man, but he ended up like traveling. This is where it all kind of began. He ended up like, traveling out of here and sending his sons, who were like, they became gods. His sons became gods, okay? Because here, this guy with all this science, right, with so much more advanced, when they show up over here in, this area, and then they show up over here in Greece, and they eventually just plant their name in Italy and everywhere. Their descendants, the sons of Noah, and I know this. But anyway, just listen up. I was saying, so the sons of Noah, basically, they go and they kind of conquer different lands, and they lands that way and lands this direction. And I'm going to show you kind of geological map type proof, if you want to call it that. Who knows? You decide for yourself. I don't really care. So basically, what I'm going to tell you is that Noah, who had sons in the Bible called Shem, Ham, and Japheth, I found out that Shem, if you go and look in some ancient literature, was also called Cham, C-H-A-M. And you can find him in other historical references from different cultures around, over here somewhere and just all over the place. So Shem was Cham. And Japheth, this is the thing that I'm so excited about and why I'm bringing this to your attention about the story of Atlantis, because I have concluded that Japheth was known as Japhet. Am I doing that right? Japhet. I'll probably show you a name there somewhere. Oh, Japetus. Yeah. Japetus was the father of Atlas. Okay? So Japheth, who is called by other texts Japetus, was actually the father of Atlas. And Atlas was over here. Okay? This was the portion of Africa where Atlas exists. And if you go look at the most ancient maps, let's see if I got that for you. If you go look at the oldest maps, and I have dug up some old maps, my friend, you can see Atlante. Okay, Atlantis was this part of what do you call it? Northern Africa. The north, I think it's west, right? Wait, am I thinking right? Northwestern corner of Africa. Atlante, it's in some of the most ancient of maps, my friends, okay? So the Atlantans, basically, they had a giant area that they controlled, right? Anyway, we'll get to all that, but that just gives you an idea, okay? So basically, you got Noah and his sons and his armies with his sons. He had armies. I mean, this guy was powerful, dude. How do you think he ended up in the Bible? Basically, him and his sons, with their armies, they came out and they conquered different, all the areas out here. Dude, these guys out here had not yet got the science of agriculture, right? So if someone comes to you with all this power, with this ability to create food, dude, they are gods, right? They are gods. That's how people back then look at things. If you come with miraculous abilities, then you're gods. That's how they looked at things back then. But now the Wonder Woman story, okay, I can't remember exactly what the island on Wonder Woman is called. I think it's called Themyscira or something like that. I'm not going to go look into it because, like I said, I'm just going to tell you what I remember at this point. But I actually found Themyscira. And Themyscira wasn't actually an island, as is portrayed in Wonder Woman. It was this little area that pokes out here. And the place still exists today. It's Thermodon. Isn't that funny? Odin at the end. Okay, well, I was just thinking of... So anyway, I don't know, look up Thermodon, the Term River. Themyscira, today I might be called Themyscirnan or something like that. It's close to the Iris River. So if you want to know where Wonder Woman's island is, it's still here. It's just not an island. It's this little town over here somewhere. So go check it out on the map because I've given you the exact location. So Karga Oasis is where Alexander the Great traveled to. See, Alexander the Great, he wanted to be... he wanted to have his bloodline connected to the great Ammon. Okay. By the way, who is the great Ammon, right? Ammon is so big in the story of religion and in the story of Atlantis, because Ammon was the father of Dionysus. Wait a minute, was Ammon? It could be that, I don't know, but Dionysus and Ammon, they were on one side, right? So Ammon was either his uncle or his father. I can't remember at this moment. Maybe Kronos was his real father. And who Kronos was on the opposite side of the battle of the Titans. You've heard that before. So the Battle of the Titans is basically when Dionysus and the Amazon warriors, and they get together, and they are on the side of Ammon, and they fight. They're considered, what is it called? It's called, what are the two words? The Titans, right? The Titans versus the Olympians. Okay, Titans versus Olympians. You've heard of this, the great battle, Titans versus Olympians, which is also the great battle of heaven versus earth. Those two stories are the same story, but translated for different religions, right? Well, Dionysus was with had the Amazons and was on the side of Ammon, and Ammon became such a big historical god figure that it's my belief that that's where the word Amen comes from. Amen comes from his name, and Ammon was the son of Noah, who's called Ham, and that name Ham later becomes Ham. Hammond, then Ammon in different other translations. You got Ammon, and you have a little area here called Hamonaica. So this was a region ruled by Ammon. Oh, look at this, by Ammon from Triton. This is fascinating because Triton confuses me. Like, I almost wonder if Triton is another name for Noah. I don't know. It gets confusing, this Triton thing, because maybe Triton, I might actually show you a genealogy that figures out Triton might have been an uncle. He seems to be an offshoot. But he was powerful, this Triton guy. He was in the stories of those guys, the Argonauts, right, who traveled here. They were blown over to here. This right here was the ancient Lake of Tritonus. This actually is the same place that today is dry, and that they filmed some scenes for Star Wars in. They actually filmed it in this area here. But we'll get to that in a minute. That's fascinating. I just love this area because this is where Lake Tritonus was located. It's just, that part fascinated me, to this whole story about this Triton. So somehow Hamonaica, received by Ammon from Triton. So here is the location of Hamonaica, whatever. Hamonaica, let's call it. Hamon eggs. There you go. But he received this from Triton. So Triton apparently was more authoritative than Ammon. Fascinating. Maybe he was a brother of Noah. I don't know. So fascinating. But anyway, Alexander the Great wanted to make a travel all the way to the Karga Oasis because it was believed that that's where I can't remember the name of these women, but these mystical women who held all the information, all the knowledge of Ammon, right? And so Alexander the Great, he so wanted to be connected to the god Ammon, right? Now, by the way, this god Ammon, if you go into more research, you're going to find out Ammon is also a god in Egypt. Okay, you can go look that up. Amon. Look up Amon, Ammon, and you'll find out he was a very influential god of Egypt. Okay, but I'm telling you, he is the same guy. He's Ham. He's Ammon. He's the Ammonites, possibly, and this. And so he was Ammon over here, a great god, man. I mean, he was so great that he was tied to Ra, right? Ra was the sun god. That was a great god that people thought was a god. And there was even times when Ammon was called Ra Ammon or Ammon Ra. I think it was Ammon Ra or something like that. And so that's just fascinating. So Ammon was a big deal, so big a deal that even today Christians are saying Amen, not knowing that they're saying Ammon. Son of Noah, dude. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know what's fascinating. Okay, Mycenaean tablets from Chenea and Pylos reveal Dionysus worship as early as 1300 BC. You hear that stuff, dude? So as early as 1300 BC, they found tablets showing that Dionysus was worshipped as early as 1300 BC. So you have to understand the days of Noah and his sons. We're talking about 2000 BC or before 1300 BC for sure. Who knows how far back it goes, right? But we're talking about the most ancient, earliest manuscripts. And there's other religions that tell this story and give everybody totally different names. Many other histories that totally different names. Even that the people that believe there's Nebu or whatever, some planet that comes around, blah, blah, blah. Even you go back in their history, those are the same people, dude. All right. Now, what I was trying to do is I was trying to find where these ancient things talking about Dionysus' travels, I tried to find the current location of these things, right? So basically, when I put in the ancient bodies of water that are no longer there, this place that Star Wars was filmed right here, right? I believe I actually found some cities found on super ancient maps that just can be useful if you ever get into the study. So Gapsa and Capsa, I located here in today's world. Tuzir or Thusaurus or Tisarus or Nicaean Gates. Oh, Nicaean Gates. So I believe the Nicaean Gates were right here, right? Today, this right here, remember I told you Chersones? This was the Chersones, which I'm still having trouble coming up with a modern day word for it. Anyway, this was the Chersones where the Amazons lived, in my opinion. And you could go visit the city today. It's Tozur. It's still around today, I believe. It's one of these names here, right? And that would be the Nicaean Gates, the famous Nicaean Gates that Dionysus and the Amazons, you have to pass through the gates to get to Nysa, so this was the Nysa where, what I think makes the most sense, that this is where Dionysus was sent to hide. I know I got a little confused. It seems like you're going to go look into it. It's like Ammon had sex with someone's wife, or no, he had sex with a woman. I think maybe her name's Amalthea or something like that. And he sent Amalthea somewhere, and then Amalthea had Dionysus. But basically, Ammon was hiding this woman and this child from his wife, right? So Dionysus was like the illegitimate son of Ammon, if I remember that. But she was a powerful woman. Oh, his wife was the sister of Cronus, right? And Cronus was like related to Atlas and brother of Ammon, right? And Ammon and Cronus were obviously on opposite sides of the war. Cronus would be in the hell side of the war. Ammon would be on the heaven side of the war. And why would that be? Why would that be, guys? Well, obviously that would be because the victors go the spoils. The people who win wars, they're the ones who are considered the good guys. Everyone else considered the bad guys. And that's why heaven and hell would be Cronus's Titans versus Ammon and Dionysus's whatever that other word I said earlier. All right. So now, on this wonderful place that it's so cool. This place still exists today, guys, but it's not surrounded by a body of water anymore. This was Lake Triton right here. This was Lake Triton. And the Triton River came off of that. The Triton River went all the way back to Mount Tahat, Hagar, Atlas, Meru, whatever. And so, basically the Argonauts traveled, got blown over. There was probably actually water here. Obviously, they said that in the ancient manuscripts, they said that Lake Triton spilled off into the Mediterranean, right? So you can make the connection here. You can see the Argonauts getting into here where there was really crazy water, crazy tides. The tides would rise and fall a lot. And so if you're there at the wrong time, the water falling, you get beached, So the Argonauts had to carry their things to a distance. And they basically got, eventually met Titan, right? Because Titan was the lord of this area here, obviously, because it's a Titan lake and all that stuff. And so it says they met King Titan, right? And so he was around here somewhere. And he helped them to find their way back out of there. And very interesting story. So Nepta, Nysa of Amazons. This is also, that's what I'm trying to say, guys. This is also the Chersones of the Amazons. You see, because they say that the nymphs, Ammon sent Dionysus for the nymphs to take care of him, but the nymphs are the Amazon warriors. So this was also the treasured land of the Amazons, right? So this is the Amazons, and then Dionysus grew up to be. He had some, rulership over them, right? Him and Ammon, but of course, they also raised him, so he had a lot of respect and all that stuff. So, that was my greatest find, just figuring out where these cities are today, what they're called today, right? So, called Tozor, called Gafsa, whatever. So that's Nephta. I gave you another name for Nysa. Another name that this place was called Nephta, Nysa of Amazons, Dionysus. Athena, Minerva. Athena and Minerva all lived there at one time. Right? By the way, the Amazon War was mostly fought, the war between heaven and hell, or Ammon's people and Kronos people, was basically fought. Where's my island? This was a big part of it. Ammon controlled this island here. Okay, so this was his base of operations, Ammon's base of operations. And so, he sent his son over here. He had land over here. He was a big deal, of course. Atlas was on the side of Kronos. Now, here's the good stuff, all right, or more good stuff. Gorgades. Oh, I love that. Now, Gorgades is also called Sarpedon, okay? The Isle of the Gorgons. Oh, dude, love that. I'll tell you why in a minute. And then Hesperides. This is where I believe it is Hesperides on the island, and then this is where Hesperides was on land. So it's like, they just named the island after the land to make it part of that or something. Now, here's what's so interesting. When, in the story where the queen of Amazons, Marina, attacked Atlantis, after she attacked Atlantis, they became friends. And Atlantis said to Marina of the Amazons, "Can you help us by attacking the Gorgons?" Remember, the Gorgons was Methuselah, right? The snakes in the hair, right? The sister of Athena that used to live on the blessed Amazon island that I showed you earlier. Well, it's interesting that the Amazons attacked Atlantis. It backs up the story that Amazon was on one side, which ended up being the winning side, and Atlantis was on the other side. It backs up that story, right? Because the Amazons, were in control of the Atlanteans. Okay. So what's interesting though is after they became friends, Atlantis said to Marina, "Can you attack the Gorgons? Because they keep attacking our other side of our land." And when you look at it, it certainly makes sense, except that it's so far away. That's the part that bugs me. But it could have been a whole nother timeline, where the Amazons, because they traveled and conquered everywhere. And by the way, here's what's fascinating. I found the modern day Amazons around here somewhere. I can't remember where. But you can look into it. I gave you their names at the beginning of it was on one of those files I showed you. So you look into that and see where their location is today. And you may put that story together, right? That those are the Amazons. They're still there today. They were somewhere, who knows? I can't remember right now. They're in this vicinity somewhere. Who knows? Maybe whatever. But they were in this vicinity. But now picture how this all makes sense now. Atlantis tells the Amazons to protect them from the Gorgons on the other side. So the Gorgons may be controlled around here. Who knows? And maybe even had some islands, So how much sense does that make, right? And the Amazons did fight with the Gorgons. But guess what? The Gorgons were vicious. So they never really could overcome the Gorgons, right? So what this means is these women, these nations of women were freaking badass, man. And so this Wonder Woman story, man, it comes from some truth. They were badass, right? Atlantis was getting their asses kicked by the Gorgades, right? Now, and then they got their ass kicked by Amazons. So the Atlantis, but the thing about the Atlanteans, that's not saying we're putting them down, okay? Because the reason why the Amazons loved the Atlanteans is because they really were very advanced in philosophy. They were very advanced in their cities were beautiful. They, and that comes into the story that Plato tries to share with us, that they had beautiful land and gardens and this and that. So just because Atlantis wasn't a great warring group, as maybe Plato tries to say they were, that doesn't mean they weren't, awesome in creating new inventions and just philosophers who came up with just beautiful cities and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's what they were good at. That's what they were known for, the Atlanteans. The other guys were known for wars and all this other crap, but there's a lot of good to be said about it, the Atlanteans, So it is a beautiful story, and perhaps a lot of what Plato shares with us is true. Look, I know in this video that I told you, I don't know this, I don't know that, I don't know this. You have to understand, I went deep, dude. So I knew a lot of stuff when I was finished with this. Too much stuff, so much that the brain can't contain it all. The descent of gods, this is just another thing I found somewhere online talking about descendants. Gaia and Pontus, which I would call Noah and his wife. Anyway, throughout their loins, whatever, they ended up creating the Gorgons, as well as the Titans and the Olympians eventually. Over here, Gaia, Earth, Pontus, Sea, Noah, his wife, or actually Pontus, Noah, his wife. Kronos, Uranus, Kronos being Uranus, possibly. There was other things that occurred where actually the children of Gaia also had babies with Gaia. Very weird, crazy stuff going on. Saturn is Rhea, Jupiter is Zeus. So, throughout all the religions from the Mediterranean, all of the religions tell the same story, but they give everybody different names, okay? But they're all the same story. Even some of that really interesting stuff where it talks about planet Nibiru coming to the Earth, which I don't believe that interpretation is correct at all. But even that whole story, with all those names of their gods, all of them are about the same story, same people. Zeus. Here I showed Japetus, which was the son of Noah, which is Shem-Ham-Japheth. That was Japheth. He was the father of Atlas, Jupiter Semele. Here we have Bacchus, Bacchus is another name for Dionysus. This is talking about the Argonauts. It was part of my story. There was an old story of the Argonauts. You can read that yourself. Basically, they tell the story of the Argonauts traveling by boat. They were traveling here. They were trying to head over here. While they were trying to head over here, a strong wind blew them over here into Lake Triton and the marsh, right? And basically what I'm going to show you, and every proof points to it, is that Lake Triton is over here, okay? And if you read about the story of that, they talk about the Argonauts, I don't know, fictional story, but it's based on, understandings of where things were and all this stuff way back in the day. So that was a story that I just kind of wrote down here that added to some of the geographical locations of things. Strabo, in many places the water is shallow, and at the rise and fall of the tide, ships sometimes fall in the shadows and settle there. It's rare for them to be saved. Now I wrote down that just to give you extra information about this right here is by the Gulf of Gabes, is called, I think that was Syrtis, Major Syrtis or Minor Syrtis. Maybe it was Major. But if you actually study the encyclopedia about that today, you'll find that this description still happens today. You have incredible tides that rise and fall over here, more than many other parts of the Mediterranean Sea, which really fits the story of where that access point to Lake Tritonus and the Triton River was and stuff like that. So that's what I wanted to show you there. Here's a little map of what some other people have concluded where Shem, Ham, and Japheth were dispersed to. I don't know about Shem. Japheth, who knows, maybe he was over there. Remember that's the father of Atlas. Ham, that's going to be a big part of our story because that's Ammon. Once again, remember, we got Dionysus and Ammon. And the geography is pretty good for where Ham ended up. That's on maps all over the place, and I'll show you different names that region was called. This is just another version of a map that I created, just that I didn't end up using in the final process. Now here, this is an old thing, but they call parts of this land over here, once again, this is in the northwest Africa. We have anti-Atlantis, anti-Atlas. When you hear Atlas, just think of Atlantis because they're the same thing pretty much. The king of Atlantis was Atlas. But these are just mountains we're talking about right now. But why were they named after the king of Atlantis, right? Come on. They're named that because it adds to the argument that Atlantis was in this part of Africa. So anti-Atlas, high Atlas, middle Atlas, just adds to the argument a little bit. Doesn't prove anything, but adds to it. This is just a note I wanted to share with you. I found some ancient Irish annals of Clonmacnoise, whatever. And in that, Noah was spoken of having but 3 sons, as aforesaid, gave them 3 parts of the world. So that's not the Bible. This came from a historic text from the Irish. That is to say, to Shem got Asia, Cham or Ham. Cham is a very popular name for Ham in other manuscripts. He got Africa, which I pretty much can agree with, and to Japhet or Japheth, Europa. And this map right here is a really cool map because out of millions of maps that I located, this one's really cool because at the time of Plato, when everyone's writing and describing everything, this is kind of a map that really helps you understand what's being talked about. It shows you where Libya was, right? Because they may be talking about ancient times, but they're talking about ancient times and describing it in their modern lands, right? So this is a map of their modern lands. So, you have Libya here. Right up here somewhere was that Biblia, that city of Biblia, ancient city of Biblia, where I was going to show you that Noah went to before scattering his seed amongst the entire surrounding Mediterranean. So this is just a cool map, just for that reason. Mauritania was actually up here. These days Mauritania is a little lower. So Carthage is the word I was looking at before. If you ever want to get an idea of what when they talk about Atlantis being an island, right? I want you to go and look at Carthage. Look at the most ancient images of ancient Carthage. And maybe Google ancient Carthage. You know what? Maybe we'll do it now. Just what they meant by Atlantis being an island. See, an island can also be on a continent. And when we look at these images of Carthage, okay, Carthage did what a lot of people did back in those days as a way of protecting their army, their navy, whatever, is they created these, just like we hear Atlantis was a circle city. It had land in the middle, water, and then land, and then water, and then land, and then water, right? That principle was a very popular principle in the ancient times to protect your navy, I guess you'd call it. To protect, you'd have all your boats and your main boats in here in the middle of the water. So when Plato describes the circle city, he's describing like the ultimate protected fortress, right? That's what he's really describing. And looking at ancient Carthage, you get that idea of that being the case. Now here, I simply laid over a map onto this other map to give us an idea of some things. Okay, so we talked about Noah basically coming out of here, ending up at Byblos, and then everything happening from there. So this is just a cool little map, kind of overlaid here. It just lets you see ancient Mesopotamia, all the names of ancient Mesopotamia. Maybe you should take a screenshot of this when I move my cursor. Very interesting. And it was thought to be some of the earliest of civilizations. And this is me laying over that scientific map, which is part of how I ended up putting all these rivers onto the map that we end up talking about in a minute. This is a really ancient map here showing that, remember the Gorgons that are going to be part of our story? We have Gorgades here. So this is showing that possibly the Gorgons lived in these islands, and we'll show you more about that in a little bit. Very interesting. I'm just taking a peek here. Okay. Here is Lake Triton. The Lake Triton that no longer exists. It is now dry. all dried out. And it is actually where one of the Star Wars films was filmed. They were filmed on location at this dry bed here. Okay, guys, I want to talk to you about the most exciting place for me in all of the Mediterranean surroundings. One of the most exciting to me, which is the Lake Triton and the Triton River and the home of Dionysus and the Amazons. It's such an exciting thing because it's the center of everything. It's the center of it's the center of the war between the Titans and the what they call the gods and the Titans, or heaven and earth, or the Titans versus the Olympians, right? And so I wanted to show you on a couple maps where this is located, because there's so many questions about where was that home of Dionysus? Where was the Amazon's home, which they called the Chersonese, which means the peninsula, right? Where was Amalthea's horn? All these questions. Where was this fascinating peninsula, right? That was called Amalthea's horn because it looks like a horn, right? So let me show you on a few of the oldest maps. There's no doubt where it was, guys. Look here. You have the Minor Syrtis, or Syrtis Minor, and here you have Syrtis Major. So the Triton River, which spilled out into the ocean which surrounds the earth, which can otherwise just be called the Mediterranean, right? It's listed on this very old map right here, just as I have been trying to say, where it's located. And on this very same map, by the way, it shows that the river Triton goes all the way to the mountains. And on other maps, you'll see that beyond the mountains is what you call Ethiopia, right? And there's some works that talk about, that describe Triton and the river being between Ethiopia and the Atlas Mountain, which we could show on other maps, what have you. But this is one of the oldest maps, my friend. And also, it shows Atlantis, the location of Atlantis, okay? And if you really want to understand extra proof of where Atlantis was, then just think about the different mountains that are called Atlas Mountains. Atlas was the king of Atlantis. Why would they call the mountains in an area by the name of the king of Atlantis? Well, because just like this map shows, Atlantis is on the northeast side of North Africa, northeast side of North Africa. Atlantis is not it's huge. And the island of Atlantis, as described in many documents that I talk about in other places, the island of Atlantis is on the land of Atlantis, right? So anyway, this is one old map showing you where Atlantis is, okay? And I'm going to be showing you, or I already did, I don't know where I'm putting this in the video, but one thing we have stories of Atlas dying in Mauritania, which in the old maps is up high. Some other maps it's a little lower. We're going to be showing you like the Gorgons being down here, Atlantis being here, actually Atlantis being a bigger area, and Libya actually being all of this area in some of the older maps, and how the Amazons basically had their safest spot. Just like Carthage has a safe place for its navy, just like Atlantis had a safe place for its navy, the Amazons, led by Dionysus, who was the son of Ammon, who's Ham, the son of Noah, they had the beautiful location, well protected from any armies, just as beautiful as any description of Atlantis. And I would almost go so far as to say that, Plato's story describing Atlantis being circular shaped, similar to Carthage of his day, that a lot of his stories he took from what happened here in Triton, and at the island they called Fla, which wasn't actually an island, it was actually a peninsula or a Chersonese that the Amazons also are from. And then there was a giant earthquake, which caused a breakage. Before, Lake Triton did go into the Syrtis Minor, but after the great earthquake, it must have lowered that area between Triton and this, which caused the lake to drain. And that is when the island of Fla, with the city of Nysa and the Nicaean gates, all disappeared, because they didn't actually disappear from the world. They were still there, but they couldn't be found anymore because the water was gone. And that island or peninsula was the only land mass within all of Triton. So after the water drains away, then you no longer know where it is because it looks totally different. Now it's just a piece of land, the highest piece of land in the area. Bada bing, bada boom. So there it is on a nice, old, beautiful map. Now here's another old map, a map of Africa, Propria, and Numidia. It's got some Roman measurements here. It puts, it's kind of flipped over to the right. Here's Pillars of Hercules. Here's the ocean that goes toward, that's west, and that way would be America. Here's the Mediterranean. And here we have the Little Syrtis, okay? And connected to that, you have the Lake Triton, right here, Tritonus Lake. The waters Little Cape, looks like, or Cape or something like that. And then this also shows the Triton River extending a long distance out that way. Hey, here's another map. Let's look close at this so you can get a good look at it, what that says. Very good. And some of that there. Because sometimes this stuff shows up not very clear on YouTube. So I'm just showing you what all it shows here. This actually shows Carthage. Very interesting, looks like. And a bunch of names of this, that, and the other. So yeah, here we are, Syrtis Minor. And here we have Triton River. So we go from, and here we have Nysa. And by the way, think of, once again, I said that this was where Dionysus, actually the word Nysa, the name Dionysus, actually I think has the word Nysa in it. It could actually even mean like from Nysa or something to that effect, right? So Nysa, once again, is a city on the island of Phila or Phila, sometimes spelled Fla. Tritonus is the name of the Lake Triton. What do we got here? Oh, baby, this is interesting. So with this being an old map that shows Nysa, there's this story of how the Amazons, who would have been here, the Amazons would have kind of controlled this whole area here. But the Amazons who started their war campaign against, first against the Atlantans, they would have been here. And in their story, it says that they went to attack the Atlantans. Okay, now we know that the Atlantans, so we know from other maps that the Atlantans are going to be this direction and the Gorgons over here somewhere. We would probably have Kronos or Shem. Shem, Ham, and Japheth were the sons of Noah. Shem being called Kronos the god, and also famously called Cham. Yeah, he'd be over here somewhere. But here's what I really like about this map, okay? Because everybody talks about the Amazons first attacking the city, the Amazon city of Kern or Cern. Now, everybody says that Cern, in other newer maps, I think they point out Cern being maybe over here somewhere. Maybe I'm confused. But here we have Cern in one of these older maps, and I just really like seeing that this could have been the Cern that was captured by the Amazons, right? So it looks like Cern was a little island here, because where I've showed it to be in some of my video you might see before or after this, I think I might be wrong about that. And other people have said that that's the location too in my other parts of the video. But I'm just not so sure that that's where it is. So anyway, that's another nice old map. I want to tell you that there actually was a document found in the city of Nephta. There was actually a document found in the city of Nephta that actually says that Nephta was Nysa. In other words, Nephta was the great city that everything is centered around, and that was on the Chersonese, the peninsula, and that others said was on the island. I found that out later, but the way that I decided Nephta was it was because I actually created this 3D model. Nowhere else on the internet have I ever seen a real life model based on 3D and me filling in the water based on true depths that are there today. Nowhere have I ever found someone creating this. You could see the physical location of this here, which is first called Amaltheus Horn, because basically Ammon fell in love with Amalthea, slept even though he was married to Rhea, which was the sister of Kronos, right? And so by him cheating on Kronos' sister, or Cham's sister, or Shem's sister, when Amalthea got pregnant, Ammon sent Amalthea to a place he called Amalthea's Horn. Why was it called a horn? Hello? Look, it looks like a horn, okay? This is a true 3D rendering. And so I discovered and came to believe that Nephta over here somewhere, was the great city of Nysa, because when I started filling the water in from a three-dimensional program that allowed me to do this on with true heights and depths of this land area, this is when this appeared. And you can see that they said the Nicene gates are the only way onto this by land. So if you want to talk about Plato's description of a super protected navy or super protected landmass because of all these concentric circles, tell me this is not incredibly protected, beautifully protected. Look at this very high point here, right? So it was difficult to get to the city of Nysa, right? So they even may have called it an island because it's so difficult to get to from over here. But you basically would have had Nephta as the city of Nysa, and the Nicene gates would have been around here somewhere, which was the only passageway on land to get to Nysa. So originally, this is called Amalthea's Horn, because Amalthea was sent here pregnant to be hidden away from Rhea. Rhea, when she found out about Amalthea being pregnant and Dionysus being born, Rhea wanted to kill Dionysus, and Kronos was going to make that happen. And so the entire battle between heaven and hell, or heaven and earth, or the gods and man, is all really the story of that's based all around a man cheating on a woman, which is the beginning of all wars, right? A man falling for the wrong woman, right? And so if you ever see this picture, no one else I've ever found has created the picture to show you exactly what it looks like, what Amalthea's Horn looks like. So it was first called Amalthea's Horn because that was the first name of it, right? That Ammon called it that out of respect for Amalthea because he loved her. Later, Dionysus is born, and so they end up naming the city Nysa, and then later after that, since in a map that I'll show you sometime along this video, that the queen of the Amazons married a child of Dionysus, so later the Amazons referred to it as the peninsula, the Chersonese, right? And so this is Amalthea's Horn, this is the island of Phla and the city of Nysa, and this is the Amazons, Chersonese. That's why this is such a huge thing, this spot right here. And you get to see it now exactly as the landmass appears in a body of water. Baby, gotta love that. Here is a map from 1540, I guess AD. Yeah, it would be AD, wouldn't it? It says a little something, something over there. The Syrtis, Carthage. And here it just shows the Triton River. Perhaps that's after the big earthquake emptied the lake, and then maybe perhaps a river was still there. And it looks like here they're calling it Regnu Tunis. So maybe it's the Regnu River or the Tunis River or something. So maybe that was the name they called it at a later time. But interesting enough, this one shows Mari here, which could represent Mauritania. Looks like some other names here. It has Atlas here, shows a king's crown, perhaps showing this as the area of Atlas, which actually would be very similar to where we've placed it in some other areas. So very interesting that it shows Atlas. And maybe it's even has this giant, this picture here. I wonder if somehow that's representing, and maybe the king crown being here, I wonder if that's representing that this could have been the location of one of Atlantis's most important cities. So how interesting might it be to figure out what this Gazola is? And who knows, that's kind of interesting, Atlas and a building there. Not sure what to say about that. This just says that the Capes River is Triton. Perhaps the most recent name for the river is Capes. I see up here, you got the word Capes. Okay, and here is my map that I invented, created, which in my opinion shows the most accurate visual of Amalthea's Horn and the exact locations and the names of the cities today. If you see this picture somewhere else, my friends, I don't know, they might have got it from me, because I'm the only picture on the internet I know of that shows the actual shape of this Amalthea's Horn right here, this Chersonese of the Amazons. And basically I tell you that Tozir is the name today, these are past names, was the Nicene gates of the past. Nephta, at the end of the island, is the Nysa, and home of the Amazons. Remember, the Amazon Queen Marina married the son of Dionysus, according to a chart that I'm showing you later or sooner. But this is all based on real depths where water could have been held. So, yeah, baby. And once again, that story that a giant earthquake destroyed Atlantis, the story in Plato's story, I've told you before that I just became highly suspicious that Plato took a lot of stories to create the Atlantis story, and his purpose was to sell to his fellow Grecians of Greece his idea of the perfect society, right? But I just have suspicion that the big earthquake or whatever that caused this breakage to break lower, by the way, this should be connected. It's not in here. But that caused this all to empty and caused this to be lost, as I've described. This, I think, because this is the center of everything, man. According to Plato, that Atlantis city was the center of everything, but this was the real center of everything, man. Oh my gosh, so cool. I just love this. Can't get over it. And before I leave you, I'll show you one more little thing that, if you didn't see my previous video series, this video series was acting like Plato's story never existed. But if you didn't see my previous video series, in that video series, I talk about, since this is the land of Atlas, right, that I did actually find a circular area that's quite interesting. You can go back and see I actually created graphics, beautiful graphics in my 7 or 9 part series showing how the water would have filled in this area here. So, if you want to believe that the Circle Cities was a dealio, this is actually humongous, much bigger, this big thing here, than any measured descriptions in Plato's story of the Circle Cities. But at the same time, there was some things in the center there that could have actually worked out as his circle city. And I show you here that this was actually one of the highest areas in the entire area of Atlas territory, right? You could see by the lighter yellow color here, this was actually one of the highest possible elevations. And so that's interesting, yeah, to have Atlantis City in here. But I talked about that in the other video. It's the Richat structure, yeah. But I give some of the most beautiful 3D images of that in my previous series, which I now disagree with a lot of it because of the newer story I gave you. But actually, this is one of the highest areas, plus over here is one of the highest areas. Oh, one last thing. Anywhere in my video where you see me saying Hesperides is here or way over here, some of the description of Hesperides being another name for the land of the Amazons, I would also say that this was also referred to as Hesperides, and that some of the other locations were not the actual Hesperides that the Amazons dwelt on. So that's my last word, baby cakes. And remember, this portion of the video you're listening to right now is the latest I've done in the entire series. So consider this information better than all other information in this video, whether it's behind earlier or later in this video. There's one last beautiful snapshot. Now, this right here is just something someone put together as to their theorizing of where everybody was in this Atlantis saga, right? And personally, I don't think they're too far off. So you have Amazons, Atlantis, Gorgons, although I was showing you Gorgons could have been over here somewhere. So just an interesting map to look at. Okay, this is Atlas of Atlantis descended from Hebrew and Greek gods. Is something I came up with here. I'll just share a little bit with you. Or maybe I'll just let you read through this stuff, but maybe I'll check out some high notes. Ilion Hippistus, the Most High, and his wife named Beruth dwelt about Byblos. Now, if I remember correctly, I decided Ilion Hippistus, also thought of as El Elyon, which is getting more close to kind of a name of God in a sense, God Most High, plus Beruth, his wife, perhaps, which could be translated Berithus, Beirut, named after her, perhaps. Let's see, I don't know if I decided, and let's just go ahead and throw it at you right now, that there's a guy named Noah, who's obviously very popular in the Christian and the Hebrew Bible. But I'm going to show you that this was possibly a real person, a very powerful person, and he's a big part of my story about Atlantis. And this just blew me away when I dug into this. So let's see. I guess maybe I decided that might be Noah. And please, when I sound chalant about this, you just have no idea the kind of study I deeply went into to come up with these concepts. Noah's wife, Titea, Terra, Gaia. Gaia, I think, might even mean Earth, right? And I just show you just kind of a geology. I'm not going to speak good English today, trust me. My brain's a little dead. Found out that this guy, Pontus, now Uranus, Epigis, Autoston, I don't know if that turned out to be Kronos or something. I don't remember right now. But Pontus would be grandfather of the Gorgons. Now, Gorgons will be in something that's part of our story, so that's interesting. So let's read a few quick things here. In Greek mythology, Gaia, also spelled Gaia, is a personification of the earth. Primal earth goddess, immediate parent of Uranus, whose sexual union she bore the Titans and the Giants. And so what I'm going to end up talking to you about is that the Titans and the Giants were actually descendants of Noah. I'm going to point out how that all works out. Okay, so here's something I added. Triton. Triton's kind of a big name in my story. Gave Hammoniaca to son Ammon. So he gave a parcel of land to Ammon, who is the father of Dionysus. Okay, so Ammon is the father of Dionysus. Ammon and Dionysus are big parts of my story. So Ammon is Ham, is Kronos. I'm not sure I'm going to agree that Ammon is Kronos, but these are, Ammon is Ham, okay, in the story of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Triton is Noah, is Uranus. So Uranus, I'm saying, I guess, at this stage of my study, I thought that he was, Triton could be Noah, but actually I don't think so. I think Triton might be kind of highly important, but he might be a brother to Noah or something like that. We'll talk about how that fits in the story later. These are some of the younger people, right? You basically, let's take a look. Basically, the Titans would be the older generation. These would be the sons of Noah. That's who the Titans would end up being. And here we have Lapetus, or Japetus. He's a big part of my story, and I'll just go ahead and throw it out to you. He's going to be the father of Atlas of Atlantis when I'm all done with this, okay? And actually, in this little thing here, it shows Iapetus, father of all these people, who cares, whatever, but he's the father of Atlas. I'm just going to tell you the important parts of my story. Now, Elis or Cronus, right? El is a Northwest Semitic word meaning god or deity, referring to any one of multiple major ancient Near Eastern deities. A rare form, Ela, represents the predicate form of Old Akkadian, and in the Amorite, the word is derived from the Proto-Semitic archaic. I don't know if I needed to read that to you. It's not telling me much of what I want to share with you. Here we go. Here's information I added in here. Olympians versus Titans. This is the big battle, okay? Olympians versus Titans. A little overexcited. I'm going to mispronounce words, guys. I'm actually very tired right now. But the Olympians versus Titans is actually the same story of the battle in the Bible of heaven versus earth. What happens a lot of times in history, especially the most ancient of history, which we're going to talk about today, is that real things that occurred, real battles that occurred, they end up being turned into myth and turned into heaven and earth battled and the gods battled, and these guys were gods and they fought against other gods. And I'm going to tell you, it's just people who fought against other people. They were all, warring families, what have you, okay? But let me read this, because I put this here for a reason. Dionysus, or Dionysius, different pronunciations, gathers from Nysa on Flaw Island. Now, Flaw Island I found in ancient maps, my friend, and I'm going to end up telling you where Flaw Island was and where Nysa was. They're the same place. And Nysa is a big deal, right? Dionysus, I'm going to tell you how the war happened. Dionysus gathers from Nysa on Flaw Island. I'm going to show you where Flaw Island is today. Dude, I found it, I think. And I'm telling you, no one else, to my knowledge, knows about this. I could be wrong. Everything's possible, but I'm going to show you exactly on a map where this ancient place was that was so important in the big battle, and that has to do with the Atlanteans. Also, some Libyans. Athena leading the Amazons, nymphs. That's two names for the Amazons, nymphs, Amazons. Also, some Libyans, Zeus, Olympian, Cronus' son. Now, throughout my teaching here, I'm going to be having dashes like this to give you multiple names for the same person. Okay, Zeus, Olympian, Cronus, son. A little confused about what I'm saying there, Cronus' son. Oh, Zeus is Cronus' son, I think is what I'm saying there. But Zeus is an Olympian, okay? So the Olympian is the younger generation that went to war against the older generation. Also, okay, so Athena, to defend his father. So Zeus, or we're actually talking about Dionysus here, just so you know. Dionysus, I'm sorry I got to reread these things, dude, but I'm trying to give you this story. I got so much crap here. It'll get easier when I get to the map. So Dionysus is the main thing. Okay, gathers from Nysa on Flaw Island the soldiers. Athena leading Amazon nymphs, also some Libyans. Now Dionysus is Zeus in this list here. I think Cronus is, no, he's Ammon's son. It's been a long time, guys. To defend his father Ammon. So this is the main story. Olympians and Ammon are fighting. They are with the Olympians, fighting against the Titans of their parents' generation, including Cronus and his nephew Atlas. So Atlas was on the wrong side of the fight. He was, if you're calling it a fight between heaven and earth, Atlas and Cronus were on earth. They were kind of the bad guys. Well, they're bad guys because whoever wins a battle ends up being called the bad guys, right? So it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they get in the future descriptors, they get called the bad stuff, and and Dionysus and Ammon and the Olympians get called the powerful entities, right, and all that. Okay, another Titans. Instigated by, okay, so the whole battle, the whole war was instigated by Cronus' sister Rhea. Rhea, also called Pandora, because she was cheated on by Ammon. This caused the entire battle between heaven and earth, my friends, which isn't, you already know, guys, I'm calling it a real battle, but I'll still say things like that. Now, this whole battle was because Rhea, okay, Ammon was married to Rhea. Rhea was the sister of Cronus, right? So when Ammon cheated on Rhea with, I think it was Amalthea, perhaps, Ammon and Amalthea had a baby named Dionysus. Okay, now I'm getting it straight in my head. It's been a long-ass time since I went over my notes. So that's why Ammon and Dionysus are on the same side, because Ammon and Dionysus is the son of Ammon. In some research, they might say that he was the son of Cronus, but maybe that works out later. But as far as physically, he was the son of Ammon. Okay, and Zeus Olympian becomes king of the world. Once again, Zeus the Olympian is Dionysus. Later becomes king of the world. The rest become gods. Okay. Here we see Zeus Olympian, son of Cronus and Rhea, after Dionysus forgave them. Now this is after the battle, right? Later became Zeus Olympian, son of Cronus and Rhea, after Dionysus forgave them, because there was another Zeus that was younger later, that may have been the son of Cronus and Rhea. They called him Zeus later, and he became famous also. Or this could be a mixing of the current Dionysus. Anyway, later became king over all, right, with Dionysus' support. Okay, so in other studies, I found out that, yeah, this Zeus Olympian, son of Cronus and Rhea, became king over all with Dionysus' support. Although I have a suspicion that Dionysus was this guy, and they just had to build this story to make it all make sense. Anyway, later named his son Dionysus also, who became king of Egypt. After death was called Zen. So Dionysus is also called Zen, and acclaimed god of the universe. And let's read this last thing. The Amazon's nymphs protected the baby Dionysus at Mount Nysion. Mount Nysion. Homer's another place that was called Nysion, but it's not what I'm going to show you, because I did further research after I wrote all this. Appears that both Ammon and son Dionysius welcomed women to fight in their army. Enmity between Olympians, or enmity, hatred, stress, whatever, between Olympians and Titans is probably why. According to Diodorus, now Diodorus is an ancient historian, Amazons from Nysa attacked, well, I'm saying they're from Nysa, because I figured out where they called it from Charzanes, whatever. They attacked the Atlantans, Titans, Cronus, Atlas, Diodorus. Later, Amazon queen Marina, who destroyed Cern of the Atlantans, married Taos, something like that, son of Dionysus, and became friendly with the Atlantans. Okay, so I think I connected Taos. Yeah, Dionysus had Taos. Taos says married Marina, queen of the Amazons, who might have been born of Ares. So perhaps Ares is this Taos. Oh, no. The Ares is the father of Marina, perhaps. Okay, gotcha.
Ammon and his son were of similar minds. They both supported the empowerment of women. and even would allow women to fight in their armies. This was the beginning of a powerful female fighting force, called the Amazons. The first woman to lead the Amazons was Athena. Diodorus Amazons of Athena and Gorgons of Medusa, we are told, namely, that there was once on the western parts of Libya, on the bounds of the inhabited world, a race which was ruled by women and followed a manner of life unlike that which prevails among us. For it was the custom among them that the women should practice the arts of war and be required to serve in the army for a fixed period, during which time they maintained their virginity. Then, when the years of their service in the field had expired, they went into the men for the procreation of children, but they kept in their hands the administration of the magistracies and of all the affairs of the state. The men, however, like our married women, spent their days about the house, carrying out the orders which were given them by their wives, and they took no part in military campaigns or in office or in the exercise of free citizenship, 9 in the affairs of the community, by virtue of which they might become presumptuous and rise up against the women. When their children were born, the babies were turned over to the men, who brought them up on milk and such cooked foods as were appropriate to the age of the infants. Their home was on an island which, because it was in the west, was called Hespera, and it lay in the marsh Tritonus. This marsh was near the ocean which surrounds the earth and received its name from a certain river Triton which emptied into it. The island mentioned above was of great size. The Amazons, then, the account continues, being a race superior in valor and eager for war, first of all subdued all the cities on the island except the one called Mena, which was considered to be sacred and was inhabited by Ethiopian ichthyophagi, and was also subject to great eruptions of fire and possessed a multitude of the precious stones which the Greeks call anthrax, sardian, and smaragdos. After this they subdued many of the neighboring Libyans and nomad tribes, and founded within the marsh Tritonus a great city which they named Cherenisus after its shape. Note, peninsula, presumably the city lay on a ridge of land running out into the marsh. Setting out from the city of Cherenisus, the account continues, the Amazons embarked upon great ventures, a longing having come over them to invade many part of the inhabited world. The first people against whom they advanced, according to the tale, was the Atlanteans, the most civilized men among the inhabitants of those regions, who dwelt in a prosperous country and possessed great cities. It was among them, we are told, that mythology places the birth of the gods, in the regions which lie along the shore of the ocean. In this respect agreeing with those among the Greeks who relate legends, and about this, we shall speak in detail a little later. Now the queen of the Amazons, Myrina, collected, it is said, an army of 30,000 foot soldiers and 3,000 cavalry, since they favored to an unusual degree the use of cavalry in their wars. For protective devices they used the skins of large snakes, since Libya contains such animals of incredible size, and for offensive weapons, swords and lances, they also used bows and arrows, with which they struck not only when facing the enemy but also when in flight, by shooting backwards at their pursuers with good effect. Upon entering the land of the Atlanteans they defeated in a pitched battle the inhabitants of the city of Kern, as it is called, and making their way inside the walls along with the fleeing enemy, they got the city into their hands, and desiring to strike terror into the neighboring peoples they treated the captives savagely, put to the sword the men from the youth upward, led into slavery the children and women, and razed the city. But when the terrible fate of the inhabitants of Kern became known among their fellow tribesmen, it is related that the Atlanteans, struck with terror, surrendered their cities on terms of capitulation and announced that they would do whatever should be commanded them, and that the Queen Myrina, bearing herself honorably towards the Atlanteans, both established friendship with them and founded a city to bear her name in place of the city which had been razed, and in it she settled both the captives and any native who so desired. Whereupon the Atlanteans presented her with magnificent presents and by public decree voted to her notable honors, and she in return accepted their courtesy and in addition promised that she would show kindness to their nation. And since the natives were often being warred upon by the Gorgons, as they were named, a folk which resided upon their borders, and in general had that people lying in wait to injure them, Myrina, they say, was asked by the Atlanteans to invade the land of the aforementioned Gorgons. But when the Gorgons drew up their forces to resist them, a mighty battle took place in which the Amazons, gaining the upper hand, slew great numbers of their opponents and took no fewer than 3,000 prisoners, and since the rest had fled for refuge into a certain wooded region, Myrina undertook to set fire to the timber, being eager to destroy the race utterly, but when she found that she was unable to succeed in her attempt she retired to the borders of her country. Now as the Amazons, they go on to say, relaxed their watch during the night because of their success, the captive women, falling upon them and drawing the swords of those who thought they were conquerors, slew many of them. In the end, however, the multitude poured in about them from every side, and the prisoners fighting bravely were butchered one and all. Myrrhina accorded a funeral to her fallen comrades on 3 pyres and raised up 3 great heaps of earth as tombs, which are called to this day Amazon mounds. 3 But the Gorgons, grown strong again in later days, were subdued a second time by Perseus, the son of Zeus, when Medusa was queen over them, and in the end both they and the race of the Amazons were entirely destroyed by Heracles, when he visited the regions to the west and set up his pillars 15 in Libya, since he felt that it would ill accord with his resolve to be the benefactor of the whole race of mankind if he should suffer any nations to be under the rule of women. The story is also told that the marsh disappeared from sight in the course of an earthquake, when those parts of it which lay towards the ocean were torn asunder. As for Myrrhina, the account continues, she visited the larger part of Libya, and passing over into Egypt she struck a treaty of friendship with Horus, the son of Isis, who was king of Egypt at that time, and then, after making war to the end upon the Arabians and slaying many of them, she subdued Syria. But when the Cilicians came out with presents to meet her and agreed to obey her commands, she left those free who yielded to her of their free will, and for this reason these are called, to this day, the Free Cilicians. 5 She also conquered in war the races in the region of the Taurus, peoples of outstanding courage, and descended through Greater Phrygia to the sea. 16 And then she won over the land lying along the coast and fixed the bounds of her campaign at the Caicus River. 17 And selecting in the territory which she had won by arms sites well suited for the founding of cities, she built a considerable number of them and founded 18 which bore her own name. But the others she named after the women who held the most important commands, such as Syme, Pitana, and Priene. These, then, are the cities she settled along the sea, but others, and a larger number, she planted in the regions stretching towards the interior. She seized also some of the islands, and Lesbos in particular, on which she founded the city of Mytilene, which was named after her sister who took part in the campaign. After that, while subduing some of the rest of the islands, she was caught in a storm, and after she had offered up prayers for her safety to the mother of the gods, 19 She was carried to one of the uninhabited islands. This island, in obedience to a vision which she beheld in her dreams, she made sacred to this goddess, and set up altars there and offered magnificent sacrifices. She also gave it the name of Samothrace, which means, when translated into Greek, sacred island, although some historians say that it was formerly called Samos and was then given the name of Samothrace by Thracians who at one time dwelt on it. However, after the Amazons had returned to the continent, the myth relates, the mother of the gods, well pleased with the island, settled in it certain other people, and also her own sons, who are known by the name of Corybantes, who their father was is handed down in their rights as a matter not to be divulged, and she established the mysteries which are now celebrated on the island and ordained by law that the sacred area should enjoy the right of sanctuary. In these times, they go on to say, Mopsus the Thracian, who had been exiled by Lycurgus, the king of the Thracians, invaded the land of the Amazons with an army composed of fellow exiles, and with Mopsus on the campaign was also Cephalus the Scythian, who had likewise been exiled from that part of Scythia which borders upon Thrace. There was a pitched battle, Cephalus and Mopsus gained the upper hand, and Myrrhina, the queen of the Amazons, and the larger part of the rest of her army was slain. In the course of the years, as the Thracians continued to be victorious in their battles, the surviving Amazons finally withdrew again into Libya. And such was the end, as the myth relates, of the campaign which the Amazons of Libya made.
Likey. Comment. Subscribe now.